What's up, everybody? I'm Clayton. You're listening to Ages of Fear podcast number 32, The Shining. Released in 1980, directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, Danny Lloyd, Scatman Crothers. Scatman Crothers. Yeah. The budget was $19 million. The movie grossed $47.3 million, giving it a net gain of $28 million. Those are the numbers for The Shining. Hope you're all doing well wherever you are. Thank you for joining Ages of Fear. To all my new subscribers out there, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Don't forget to smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and jab that notification button to help out the channel in any way that you can. Also, while you're at it, if you're a horror fan, go check out Movies and Beyond with Michael. He's got an awesome horror channel over there. He's got bracket tournaments. He's got live streams, tier ranking. He's got all of it. So if you're a horror fan, go check out Michael's channel, Movie and Beyond. Give him a like and a subscription. Also check out the Bearded Entertainment with Eric. Another awesome horror channel for all you horror fans out there that want to feast on all the horror stuff out there. And if you're a movie fan in general and you like film, go check out this guy's movie channel, Brian Lomax Movie Talk. He's got an awesome channel over there. Plenty of stuff for you guys to enjoy. He does live streams, ranking videos, all sorts of movies out there. So if you love film, you want good reviews from someone who's actually competent, knows what he's talking about, go check out Brian's channel for some awesome stuff. Give him some love, hit that like button, subscribe to his channel, all the good stuff. So very excited for this episode, guys. We got Brian, as you can see, joining us today to talk about The Shining. I'm super excited about this. I'm a huge fan of The Shining, so I can't wait to get into this movie. But I want to first say what's up to Brian. Thank you very much for being on Ages of Fear and doing this with me, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. We've been friends online for a while, so it's kind of inevitable that at some point we'd end up doing something together. But I know
for sure. I've actually been following Brian for a while on his channel, and then we just kind of connected, reached out, found out we have a lot in common, both huge Batman fans, which is another positive with Brian. So yeah, we just kind of hit it off. So both love film and both love this movie too. So I'm interested in talking about it. Just so you guys know, though, and Brian and I were just talking about this before we started streaming, there are two cuts of this film. There's a British cut, which Brian is going to be coming at the film from, and then a US cut, which is the cut that I'm going to be coming from. The reason for that is because I've only ever seen the full US extended cut. Brian's much more familiar with the UK cut. It's the same movie. It's not like, Justice League where you have two almost completely entirely different movies. It's the same movie, just with some stuff cut out, a little trimmed down a little bit. But
the US cut does make things less ambiguous, I would say.
Interesting. Okay.
Particularly with regards to Jack's character. There's certain things in the UK cut where it's implied, and I kind of get the same sense regardless. Whereas in the US cut, there's certain things that just blatantly confirm, oh no, this is where we're supposed to be with this guy. So there's no ambiguity there. It's like, no, he is the But we'll get into that when we get into it.
Yeah. You kind of maybe want to check out the UK cut now, because I'd be interested to see the kind of trimmed down version of it. So I might have to check that out next time I watch it. But
it's difficult because it's one of those things where, like, if you've grown up with a particular cut of a film and it's always been like a 5-star film for you, then it almost becomes a bit of a moot point to check out another version of it.
Yeah.
But I would say, and again, this could just be because I've grown up with the UK cut for so long and I have particular thoughts about it. I personally feel that it's a much better cut myself.
No, that's interesting because I'm not necessarily one that always thinks the fuller film is always the best. An example for me is like Tarantino's Hateful Eight. You know, you have like an extended cut of that, which I don't think is as good as the typical theatrical cut. So yeah, I'd be interested though to check out the UK cut of The Shining. So
I do just want to, just anyone watching, right now, if you don't know me, I do just want to say I don't usually dress like this. Okay, I've just got back from a wedding, literally like 5 minutes before we got on. I've not had time to change, and it's just I'm not this guy, you know. Just I don't want to give the impression that I'm that typical kind of beret.
He's always dappered up.
Yeah, the movie critic who's so full of himself that he has to wear a suit everywhere he goes. It's not me at all. So it's literally because I didn't have time to say.
He's condescending for the channel.
Yeah. I had to just get that out there just in case people are building pictures in their head.
Who's this guy? Yeah, no, it's funny. So getting into, I always like starting with the positives and then moving into negatives with the film. But
so it's just gonna be a load of positives then, really.
yeah, pretty much. Unless you have any negatives. But before we do that, I would like to ask, do you remember the first time you saw this movie and what was your initial, if you can remember, because I know, you know, not saying that you're old, but you've been around a little bit longer than I have. So do you remember the first time you saw the movie and what was kind of your initial impression of it?
Well, this movie came out the year I was born. So
okay.
I can tell you I didn't see it in cinema when it was first released.
Yeah, I would hope not. Yeah.
But I did see it at a stupidly young age. I'll say that much. Now, I can't remember precisely what that age was, but I'm guessing around the age of 10 or 11. And
gotcha.
I remember being with my parents and possibly both my brothers, but at least one of my brothers, I think. Sat in the living room, we're watching it. A lot of it's going over my head. I remember thinking the Jack Nicholson guy is really creepy. There's just something serious enough about him. And then it gets to that scene. And you know exactly what scene I'm talking about.
Yes.
Everyone who's seen The Shining knows exactly what scene I'm talking about. And then that was it. That did it. That was like that was like one of the first things that made me glad to be sharing a room with my brother. It's like, I didn't have to go to bed by myself. That was just one creepy ass like lodges in your brain forever moment, and it's one of those. The other scene I can equate it to from a different film is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, when the kid's veins are all ripped out and he's been used like a puppet, and then that scene and the scene that I'm talking about from The Shining, those two scenes were kind of like rites of passages with regards to a second watch. Like, I didn't go back to Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 till I was a full-grown man, because that scene
it's left an impression.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, I watch it now; it looks a bit naff, to be honest. You can see, see it's all about. But as a child, when all you've got is imagination, you don't see effects, you don't see wire work and things like that. It's just you've got a creative mind, and it soaks it all up in the way that it's supposed to be soaked up. But this scene in particular, the one that everyone knows I'm talking about, that was like one day I've got to go back to The Shining just to face that scene again. Not because I want to see it, but just because I have to prove to myself that I can get through it again without breaking it the way I did last time. So that's interesting.
And that's a testament to Nicholson, man. I mean, just his performance there, which we'll get into in a minute. But I think I was around the same age when I saw it the first time. I don't remember exactly, but I know I was probably around that same age, 10, 11, somewhere around there. And I hadn't seen too many horror movies. I've told my people on my channel, I didn't really become a horror fan until much later, until I was like in college and stuff. So growing up, there's just a handful of horror movies, Halloween, a couple of the Nightmares, Shining, some of the classic Universal stuff, but there wasn't a lot of horror movies in my house growing up. So, but this was one, I think I was around 10, 11 or 12 when I saw it. And before this, all I knew was like the slashers and like the monsters and stuff. I hadn't seen an actual performance like this before in a horror movie. So it scarred me for both the acting of Nicholson and the directing of Kubrick. And that scene, knowing how to direct it and knowing how to put it together in an effective way. So that's we'll definitely talk about that as we get into the positives. But getting into the positives, starting, I would say more with like the writing. What were your thoughts for the writing of this film? Positives for you in the story, script. What were your thoughts on that?
For me, it's one of the stronger elements because, as I'm sure most people watching will know, Stephen King hated this movie when it came out.
Yeah.
He pretty much, I mean, he's embraced it since because he went all out on on Doctor Sleep. Like Doctor Sleep was essentially a sequel to this, and yet, okay, but you said you hated this. But it had his endorsement. So I don't know, maybe he's come around in recent years, but either way, I'm one of those people that is of the very strong opinion that a book is a book and a movie is a movie. And if you're adapting a book, you take what you want, you take what you can, you take what makes sense, and then you leave the rest in the book and you make a damn good movie. All that matters to me is, do we get a damn good movie out of it? And the answer to that is yes. Now I'm a fan of the Harry Potter movies. I've not read all the books. I've only read the first 2 books. I'm more the movie guy, but I've found that the general consensus with that franchise seems to be that my favorite movie in that franchise, Order of the Phoenix, is generally Potter fans' least favorite.
Interesting. Okay.
So it was the longest book, and yet when that movie came out, it was the shortest movie of up to that point of all the movies, and gotcha. It was also the only movie that wasn't written by the same guy. Now I'm struggling to remember the name of the guy who wrote all the others, but all the other Harry Potter movies were written by the same guy, and his approach to most of them generally was essentially, let's just take everything from the books and try and put it in as is. Whereas the guy who wrote Order of the Phoenix said, no, actually, what's the central thread here? Let's ditch the Quidditch, ditch all these bits that are just, they're great if you're reading, because if you're reading a book, you want to get inside the characters' heads. You want all these little moments. When you're doing a film, what's the central thread? Who is the main protagonist? Who is the main antagonist? Now give them a story and let them go on that journey. And I think what Order of the Phoenix did was just nail it in that regard. Now, I think what Kubrick does with The Shining is essentially something similar. He takes the essence of this character, Jack Torrance, and rather than giving us all of these huge scenes of him starting off as a fairly decent man, kind of stepping into darkness and then just being corrupted from within, being in this hotel. That's not the story that Kubrick was that interested in telling. The story he's interested in telling is more about what actually before Torrance even gets to the hotel, he's already corrupted. And for me, why that is more interesting is this idea that evil only gets hold of those who essentially allow it to. And when we're at the start of this movie, Jack Torrance he's already going. And this is one of the things in the US cut that spells it out a lot clearer. Now, in the UK cut, we don't get the scene where we're blatantly told that there's been a history of abuse towards Danny from Jack. In the US cut, we're given that scene where, is it like a psychiatrist goes around to see them or something, and it's pretty much spelled out that there's been an incident at some point in the past. Jack has maybe hit Danny, and part of why they're going away really is to kind of mend bridges or whatever. Well, UK cut dispenses with all of that, and you see all that you need. You get to know all that you need to know about Jack just from a very few little interactions. And that's one in the interview when Jack seems to imply that the reason he wants to come and have this job at the hotel as a caretaker is because it is so isolated, and it kind of means that he doesn't really have to see his family, even though his family's going to be there. That tells you right off the bat, okay, this guy is already he's clearly not the family man, you know? If he doesn't want to spend time with his family, he's clearly not the family man. And then there's a bit in the car journey on the way there where Jack says something, and it's very disparaging of his wife. It's very kind of like, for anyone who's been married or is married or has even been in a relationship, if you watch the interaction between them as a family in the car on the way to the Overlook, it's very clear that is not a family that is together, that is solid, that has got each other's backs.
There's a disconnection.
So yeah, big time. So when you see that in the UK cut, that's enough to imply that, okay, this is a guy that is already on a downward spiral, and it's almost like he's fully prepped to allow evil in. And I think that's ultimately what the film is about. It's not a story about a good man being corrupted by an evil hotel. It's a story about a bad man who doesn't have the strength to fight off evil, because he doesn't care about his family, because he doesn't care about the things he should be caring about. So it's more a commentary on evil and how it takes hold of people. And for me, that's why it works. And none of that really is in. Now I will hold my hand up and say I've not read the book, but I did see the Stephen King. You know, he adapted his own book. Was it Jake Weber who was in that, or one of the Weber brothers who was in that, and Rebecca De Mornay?
I'm not too sure. I haven't read the book either, so
no. Yeah. But all I know is he was very much behind the TV adaptation. It was one of them 2-part things, like 3 hours in total, and he was very much behind it. He spearheaded that one, and so he felt like, okay, this is my Shining. This is the story I really wanted to tell. And then I watched it and I was like, no, mate, it's not as good. And it's like, it's because you're spoon feeding us this thing about this. Oh, he's a good man, really, but then he's just had a few troubles, and And it just becomes that generic kind of story of someone being corrupted. But the interesting thing about what Kubrick's doing is not that this good man is corrupted, it's that he was already corrupted to begin with. And that's the point. Like, some people might say, oh, but well, that's stupid, there's no character journey. And it's like, that's not the point. The point is, like, you have to be a certain kind of person to let evil in. You know, and like, and that's kind of one of my issues with a lot of modern horror movies, is that like, we see things like films in the Conjuring universe where you'll have like a good family man. Like, okay, so take Insidious. Take Insidious, right? So you've got a movie there, a good, pretty decent family. You got kind of a good family man, and then he's just like corrupted. If I remember correctly, I can't, you know, but I feel like modern horror movies place too much emphasis on the power of evil to take good things and corrupt them, rather than stating that actually, no, that evil can only truly corrupt that which was already given itself over to it.
We willingly. You there?
I heard you say we willingly go, and then you cut off.
Okay. That's cool. I was saying, it's like you said, it's not so much that evil always overtakes that which is good, but that we willingly pursue evil, and we willingly go there and take ourselves there. So, and it's when we go there that, you know, we have to choose. Like Jack Torrance, he's not feeding the good parts of his life, his wife, his kids. He's not feeding into that. He's feeding into the evil that he's willingly given himself over to. And we all have a choice when we're in that spot to get out of it, to pursue the good, to pursue the beauty, or we have the choice to stay in that darkness and feed into that. And that's the choice that Jack made. And we see how far gone he ends up getting, and how that if you feed into that evil and you don't conquer your demons, it will destroy you. You know, it will cost your life eventually.
And that's beautifully summed up in that scene we were talking about. So we'll get to that scene now, I suppose, which is obviously it's the bathroom scene. So Jack goes in to the hotel room, the one that everyone says, "I don't go in there because it's, you know, it's dodgy." Yeah. But he goes in, and the thing is, what's the first thing he sees? It's a naked woman. It's an attractive naked woman. Now, any family man worth his salt would be out of there like a shot. Or at the very least, he would be like, "Whoa, oh, okay, excuse me, miss, but can you get a towel on, please? Who the hell are you?" That's not what Jack does. And if you look at his face in that scene, you look at what Nicholson's doing with his performance, he's enjoying it. You see him giving himself over to his lusts. And that's the point. You know, it's like this isn't it's not hard for this entity, this spirit, whatever it is, to corrupt him. He's already there, you know. Right. He's in that hotel with his wife and his child. He sees a naked woman, and the first thing he does is like, "Oh yeah, oh
yeah." So, like, he doesn't fight it off. He doesn't, you know. He just gives into it. Yeah, and you see him giving into all sorts of debauchery in this film. He was supposed to be clean for a while, and yet he's going to the bar and you know, giving into his old behavior, and he's supposed to be there for work, and he's being lazy and idle. He's supposed to be there fixing things with his family, and yet he's separating himself from the family. Everything he's supposed to be doing to be bettering himself, he's doing the opposite. And it's, you know, it's the whole family life, the good part, it's just a facade. It's just a show. You know, the true person has completely just given himself over to this evil, And I think that's what makes that story so compelling, is that it's, like you said, it's different than other horror films. It's not a guy who's, on his way down into, madness and darkness. The guy's already there. And you see him explore the dark side of his life in a number of different ways. So yeah, I thought it was brilliantly written.
Yeah. This is one of the first horror movies I saw that made me realize that horror could be more than just stab, pokey. It's like, and when those movies are done right, I love them as much as the next guy.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like, the original Halloween, the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Not so much Friday the
13th. Hey, you and I are similar at that. I got blasted for my negative thoughts on the original Friday movie.
I don't understand how that franchise got off the ground, quite frankly. But Scream, the first Scream film for me is a really great slasher, because it's about something beyond just slash stabby stab. But as great as those movies are, you watch something like The Shining for the first time after just watching that kind of horror, and you're like, oh, okay. That was something else.
That was different. And it was like the first horror movie that I saw, not having seen a lot of horror movies before, where there was actually good acting. I didn't think you could have good acting in a horror movie, and then you watch what Nicholson does in this, and you're like, okay, so if a horror film is done right, and you have a good director that knows how to direct his actors and knows how to make a good film, you can actually have good performances in a horror film, and I think that was kind of the blueprint and, inspiration for Silence of the Lambs, where we get another all-time great performance by Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. Another one of those movies where a horror movie that has just phenomenal acting across the board. So I don't necessarily buy into the notion that, horror movies get a pass for acting because it's a horror movie. No, you don't get a pass. If you're making a film, those actors are responsible for the performances they give.
It's ridiculous, the level of disrespect that horror movies get when it comes to acting. You look at what, like, Hereditary isn't my favorite horror film, just because, again, that's one of them movies where the ending is just all about evil winning, and but again, I also think there's a case to be made that film is about a family that actually doesn't take things to God, and because they've essentially abandoned God, God's abandoned them. So, but if you look at Hereditary, now, I'm sorry, but Toni Collette's performance in that film should have got an Oscar.
Yeah, for sure. She was phenomenal.
No doubt. Phenomenal. Irrespective of whatever thoughts I may have on the story and this, that, and the other, her performance was Oscar worthy. And
for sure.
To build herself up to that emotional state, it's just like, there are actresses that would build themselves up to that kind of state in a different kind of film, where they get all super emotional because it's a drama, and then they win an award for it just because they brought on the tears. But it's just like, in that scene where things are going on fire, and Toni Collette's just like full on distraught and breaking it. I'm just like,
she nails
gone in that. I'm just like, flipping heck. She's sent a shiver down my spine. She's given me an actual physical reaction because of what she's doing here. And so it's just, the fact that she wasn't even nominated for that film is pathetic.
It's one of many acting flaws that the Academy has given to actors, but a lot of people.
Let's not forget as well that Shelley Duvall for this film picked up the Raspberry Award for Worst Actress, which just not only blows my mind because it's ridiculous to think that that's a terrible performance because it's flipping anything but the state that she gets worked up to. One, I think it is an incredible performance, but two,
for sure.
Yeah, two, I think it also really forces us to have a conversation about the merits of just how far a director should be able to go, because Kubrick really put her through the ringer on this. And anyone who's seen the behind the scenes stuff, anyone who knows even the slightest bit about what went into making this film, he broke her basically. Because so when we see her cracking up at the end of the film, all shaky and just like teary and crazy looking, it's at the point where it's not even performance; it's just she's just broken,
genuine
as a person.
Yeah.
And I just, now my personal opinion is like Kubrick's up there for me, like kind of Mount Rushmore of directors, and yet I personally think that if you have to literally break your actor or your actress to get them to where they need to be, then you're doing it wrong. And like as great as this film is, and as great as pretty much most of Kubrick's work is, I personally don't think that is the way to get a performance out of someone. I think if the actor is good enough, more to the point, if the director is good enough, they should be able to get that out of them without resorting to mental abuse. Essentially, is what she was put through. And I always feel bad for Shelley Duvall because being told, and I hate the Raspberry Awards anyway. Everyone says, "Oh, it's just a bit of fun. Don't take it too seriously." But I'm sorry, you've got this woman who was essentially forced into a mental breakdown by the director for this performance. Pretty much gave everything by the time she's finished, and now she's being told by people in the industry that you gave the crappiest performance of the year.
It's
really
incredibly insulting to the actor. I mean, who puts everything they have into that performance to be essentially slapped in the face by people in the business. It's like it's insulting, man. I hate those awards too. Like like I'm all for rewarding actors for their stuff, but I'm not big on telling actors, "Hey, you did so bad that we want to recognize your performance for being the worst performance." So and
I think the only way to deal with that is the way Halle Berry dealt with it, which is to turn up and accept it. But being on the joke. But I just feel like in the case of someone like Shelley Duvall, who was literally mentally broken during the making of this film, it just feels like a bit of a low blow.
For sure. Like when you go through what she went through, it's like, that's below the belt sort of thing. But I do think she gave a great performance as well, because it's genuine. Like by the end, when she's in the bathroom and Jack's breaking through the window, and she just almost just having this panic attack. She's just huffing and like it's genuine at that moment, And yes, Kubrick push. And I agree with you, man. It raises the question: does the end justify the means? And I can't but disagree. I think you have to have some standard of, some line, some standard of morality, to say, look, I'm not going to cross this line. I'm not going to do this, which is one reason I love this guy. But you have to have a standard to keep yourself in check. There has to be a line that you're not going to cross. But that being said, I get why he was doing it. Obviously, he wanted. Part of it is also kind of on Kubrick when you think like you're casting Nicholson in this role, who has already won an Oscar, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, has already established himself one of the best actors in Hollywood. If you're going to bring an actress on there with him, you got to find someone that can match that if you don't want them to just get outshined by what he's doing. So if you have to push Shelley that hard to get the performance you want out of her, maybe you should have found someone else that could go there on their own without having to be pushed to that extent,
Yeah. And the simple fact of the matter is that wouldn't wash today. The changes that have been made in the industry, there's no way that would wash today. If a director tried that crap today on a set, not happening.
No, they wouldn't make the cut.
Yeah. And like I say, going back to what Toni Collette did in Hereditary, I'm pretty sure she didn't need to be pushed to the breaking point in order to get there. You know what I mean? So
yeah. But that's a good transition into. We talked about the writing and the story, talked about the performances. I think that's a good segue into the directing of Kubrick in this film and some of the stuff that he did. I'll just say, to the lay person, they may not recognize the genius directing of Kubrick, but to someone that has studied film, knows film, actually has done camera work, photography on the side. Like when I watch this movie, I'm fascinated by every little scene that Kubrick is doing. I mean, we get so many tracking. I've never seen a movie with so many tracking shots in them. Like a movie that, like the opening, you know, where you get Jack walking into the hotel, all the way into the office building with the hotel manager, all one shot. Then you have the tracking scenes from the side angle where they're getting the tour through the hotel, all one shot, tracking shot. To lay people don't pick up on the stuff, but these aren't always the easiest shots to pull off. And especially in 1979, when you're filming this, you don't have the technology of the 21st century. You don't have a lot of stuff that directors have today. You're doing this with, you know, not 21st century technology. And tracking shots can be difficult to pull off because of, you know, the tools and the equipment that you're having to use. You're having to lay down the track, put the cameras on there, move the cameras unless you're doing it handheld. It's complicated. So to get shots off like that and execute it as smoothly and as efficiently as Kubrick does in this film, it's really a testament to Kubrick as a director. Just the different things that he does with the camera, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, much of what he's doing with the camera here was invented for this film, because they had this new Steadicam, which as I say, they invented for this film because Kubrick had a very specific idea in his mind, particularly with regards to these corridor shots of, you know, following Danny on the tricycle, which is really, really effective because you can't get away from it. You know, like there's something about the artifice of film, of the cut, which if used properly can be incredibly effective. But a lot of people just, you know, they're used to, like, you have a wide for your setup, you have over the shoulder shots, and you have a mid shot, you know, with a 2-shot, and that's your basic kind of setup. As long as you got that, you've got your coverage, and you can. But actually, it's quite a risk to say, yeah, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get one shot. It's going to be a wide shot, and we're going to get everything in it. Well, the problem with that is that if you're not very specific as to what it is you want in it, then you're not going to get everything communicated that you were hoping to get communicated, and you ain't going to be able to fall back on, oh, it's all right, we got it in the wide, or we got it in the over the shoulder over that person's shoulder, or we got it in the 2-shot. You don't have that safety net, so it's very specific way to film things. And, you know, like the opening tracking shots in the hotel, they bring you into that world. They help you with the geography of everything that we're going to come back to. It gives you a sense of where everything is. And again, going back to those tracking shots with Danny on the bike, because we're not cutting from that shot, and then that kind of shot, and then this shot, and then down here from the corridor and then back up here from the corridor. No, we're just staying with Danny. So every time he turns a corner, and you've got the sound design as well, along with that. The wheels hitting the rug, and then back on the hard floor, and then on the rug, and then the hard floor. Constantly building that tension of something's about to happen. You feel it. It's like something's about to happen. They come around that corridor, nothing there. Comes down another. Oh man, just you're building it all the time, and then eventually you come around, and those two freaky ass girls are stood there, and it's like, what the hell? But it's like. You're not given the opportunity to be removed from Danny's perspective because it's all done in one shot. So wherever Danny rides his bike, you're riding it with him, essentially. So whatever horror is awaiting him around one of them corridors, you're going to have to face it with him. You're going to have to be there with him, and that's essentially what it does by sticking with that Steadicam shot. And people are free to disagree. Some people watch it and they say, I watched this Shining, I found it boring. It's like, okay, fair enough. That's whatever. That's your opinion, right? So, but it's like, but for me, that's the beauty of like, because I think a lot of directors can use the whole long take thing just to prove that they're so artsy and whatnot. But for me, what it's about when you're using it, it's about not allowing you to escape what your main character is going through the use of cheaper, shall we say, editing techniques, cuts, this, that, and the other. Like with jump scares these days, you can film every which way you want and then just go boom. And it's like, what's that really? Well, no. What any scare that jumps out at us at this point is a genuine scare because it's not done through the artifice of editing. It's just, no, we're stuck with this kid. We're stuck with wherever he's going, we're going. What's he going to see? So,
I think that if you're going to do tracking shots, prolonged tracking shots like Kubrick does throughout this movie, they got to be effective. And they've got to fit the characters and the perspective that's most effective to the viewer. Another good example, I think, of like Halloween, the opening tracking shot in Halloween when you get young Michael and Carpenter follows Michael as he goes through the house, into the house, up the stairs to his sister's room. Like it's effective because you're put into that scene as if you're experiencing it yourself. And when the tracking shots like that are done right, they can be incredibly effective. But some directors and some movies, they do it and it doesn't fit anything. It doesn't fit the scene, doesn't fit the characters. They're just doing it for technical aspects, but they lose the emotion or the effectiveness of the scene. So I think Kubrick does it properly here. I think he sets the example of how to do tracking shots, how to do one take shots for films, because they're effective when he does it. He knows exactly what kind of emotion he's trying to get his viewers to feel from the shots. And that's, to me, a sign of great directing. But
I will say as well that the opening sequence from Halloween was essentially done 3 years earlier in Black Christmas. But I'm just going to throw that out.
I had to throw the jab in there. You still won't give that movie 5 stars. Blows my mind.
Because it's 4-star film, man. It's 4-star film. It's a great 4-star film, but it's still 4-star.
Don't worry, we'll get Brian there one day. We'll get him there one day. He'll come around to it. But I have hope. I have high hopes that Brian will come to give Halloween 5 stars. I know he will. But no, there's actually, this is a Halloween fan coming out. There's actually 2 cuts in that scene. They're incredibly quick. But the one where Michael goes through the room and grabs the mask, when he puts the mask on, there's a brief cut when he turns and goes into his sister's room, and then there's another cut after that. But that's beside the point. Back to The Shining. I could chase down Halloween rabbits all day long. Other things that I enjoyed with Kubrick's directing, obviously as a photographer, I'm always fascinated with his color patterns that he's using, the reds, the whites. He uses a lot of greens, and this is throughout Kubrick's filmography. He uses a lot of greens just before someone's about to die. Like if you go back and you watch Shining, if you watch Clockwork Orange, if you watch, in any of his films where there's about to be a death scene, either in the scene itself or just before, there's green in the scene. Kubrick's a fan of using green for death scenes, and I picked up on it here, but there's also reds and whites that blend really well, that I just think he knew how to use color to affect his scene and his production design in his films. And I'm a nerd about that kind of stuff, like color patterns and production design, stuff like that. I mean,
Kubrick was very aware of what different color, what different meanings certain colors had as well. And I don't think it's any accident that the car that Jack drives is yellow, because yellow is the color for cowardice. It's it's like just the very car that Jack drives at the beginning of the film keys us into his character. If you're into that kind of thing, and again, some people could just write it off and say, you're reading too much into it. Maybe, but either way, Jack Torrance is driving a yellow VW, and it's essentially a symbol of his cowardice and his lack of true responsibility and manhood of being a proper father and a proper husband. It's so to me, it's a very purposeful decision that car is yellow.
No, I think Kubrick was very intentional with his production design, his color patterns, even like at the end when Jack's chasing Danny in the maze in the cold and the snow. That's a reflection of how cold and callous Jack had become at that point, where he's even trying and willing to kill his own son. He had gone so far off course that that setting, the cold and the snow, was, yes, it was wintertime, it was part of the setting, but it's also a reflection of the character that we're following and how far gone he had become, cold and callous he had become. All that stuff I think was incredibly intentional by Kubrick, because he has an eye on that, and he's a very visual director. He knows what kind of film he wants to make. He has a vision for his film, and he knows how to execute it. And it's brilliant filmmaking.
One of the, again, like, I will remind people, I've not read the book, but if the 2-part TV iteration is as faithful to the book as Stephen King seems to make it out to be, because, like I say, he really backed that version. That film ends with Jack kind of pushing back against the evil and deciding to destroy the hotel by, setting the boiler room up and then blowing the place to Kingdom Come. And for me, that wouldn't work for this. It's not where the character should end up. He should end up out in the cold, frozen to death, isolated. It's because it's a story about an evil man. It's not a story about a good man who's kind of fighting his demons and then in the end sacrifices himself for his family. No, this is a guy who doesn't like his family. There's no good there. He doesn't like his family to begin with. He sees them as a noose around his neck, and he gets what's coming to him essentially at the end of the film. It's cold. It's very. It's not a fun ride in that regard, but it's a more true depiction, I would say, of what evil is.
For sure. Yeah, I think that it bothers me when authors, and it's mainly Stephen King because he's really the only horror author that people make films out of these days. But when authors in general are critical of movie adaptations of their work, because I'm like, filmmakers aren't writing a book. They're making a film. There's a fine line between writing a book and making a film. One is you're filling in all the imagery yourself as you're reading the pages. The other is providing the visuals of the story for you. It's a different means of storytelling completely. And so when they look at, a movie and like, oh, I can't believe they weren't completely accurate to my book. They weren't writing a book, dude. Like they're making a film. Like it's a different form of storytelling. They have the liberty as the filmmaker to make the kind of story that they want to tell. If it bombs, it bombs. That's on them. But if it succeeds and it does good, I mean that's also.
This is one of the things I get into quite a lot with people, fans of Let the Right One In. So for anyone who doesn't know, my favorite horror movie of all time is Let the Right One In, which is the original Swedish version. And I have a particular take on that film that when I give my take on that film, I get a lot of kickback from it, because all the people who read the book come out and they're all like, oh, that's, just making that wasn't in the book. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but I didn't read the book. I watched the movie. Right. And the guy who directed the movie adapted the book. He did his own take of the book, which meant he left things out purposefully because he didn't want to dwell on those things. Right. In other words, it had a different meaning to him. He was going in a different direction. It's like, there's so many people who look at Let the Right One In as this love story. And it's not a love story. It is anything but a love story. It is about the corrupting influence of evil. It's about how evil is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Hence, it's actually a male vampire that has cut its bits off and made itself look like a girl. Why? Because, again, wolf in sheep's clothing. That's how it suckers the young boys in and gets them to follow it and become a caretaker. And we see it. There's a scene in that film where she allows this boy to kiss him, and he's proper into it and everything. But she's just looking at him, eyes wide open, literally just checking to see if she's got him, basically in her thrall. And that's what the film's about. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. She is evil. This isn't a love story. He may think he's in love with her. She ain't in love with him. This is all just her way of coaxing him in and grooming the new caretaker. That's what the film's about. But when I say that, everyone goes bat crazy. It's just, oh, well, you've not read the book, so you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, it's a film.
Yeah, that stuff bothers me, man, because I tell people on my channel, like, film's subjective. Like, everyone, and it's interpretive. You can get whatever you get out of the story is your subjective viewing experience. There's no right or wrong. That's what I love about it, is like, and you and I have kind of had this talk on Let the Right One In, and you actually have made me want to go back and watch it again, because I saw the Swedish one and then I saw the Matt Reeves Let Me In. And I had always viewed it as what most people do, as like this love story. But talking with you about
the American one, the American one is
it is. Yes. Yeah. But talking with you about Let the Right One In, you've given me a different perspective on it that makes me actually want to go back and watch it again. And that's what I love about talking with people with films and their subjective viewing experience and what they got out of the film, because they may not get what I see in the film. They may not see what I saw in a movie. And I love hearing what it was that they saw, what they interpreted the film, to see if I can see that same thing, But when people get so bent out of shape about it has to be exactly one thing that you have to get out of the film and see it their way, it's like, don't force or project what you got onto my experience. I want to experience it.
And the thing is like, if you have to, it's fine that you have a different reading on the film.
Yeah.
But if the only way you can defend that reading is to say what happened in the book, then you've already lost your argument. It's like, tell me what happened in the film, right? Because they're two separate entities. I don't give a toss what happened in the book. I've only seen the film. Therefore, the film is all I've got to go on. So don't come at me with some stuff that you read in the book. That's no defense of your take on it. That's just you letting the book shape, give you a prejudice. That's what annoys me, really.
Yeah, and I'm not really even that big of a reader. I mean, most of the time, I usually just watch movies. Like, there's movies that I didn't even know were based on a book, and I just watched the movie and form my own opinion about the film, because that's what I'm not a big reader. I have ADHD, so I can get distracted easy by stuff. It's much easier for me to keep my attention if I can watch a film rather than read material of a story. But are there other positives specifically with this film that you wanted to mention or talk about that we haven't discussed?
Well, as with most of Kubrick's work, the use of classical music rather than modern kind of score, he doesn't generally take. He doesn't generally bring a composer in to, build a score from the ground up. He tends to take famous classical pieces, or even not so famous classical pieces that become famous because he's used them in his movies. But there's something about doing that makes any movie is made timeless. If you take a piece of music from the 80s, you stick it in a film, you are instantly stuck in the decade that it came out.
Right.
There's no escaping that. It's just like, that's 80s music through and through. If you take, like Rachmaninoff or Bach or whatever, not to sound like a pretentious prick or anything, but there's a reason that people are still listening to that music like 100, 200, 300 years later.
Right.
It's because it's become timeless by that point. You can use it in anything, and it just, I feel like sticking with that kind of music for your movie just is a good choice. Is all I'll say, and it works.
And making it work, making it work is big. Moving into negatives, I personally don't really have any negatives with this film. What would you say for you for negatives?
Yeah, so I didn't have any negatives for this film until I saw the US cut. Now, that's a tricky thing, because I imagine if I'd only ever seen the US cut, if that's the cut I'd been raised on, I would probably still be in the camp of, it's a 5-star film. It's one of the best horror movies ever made. Blah blah blah. Everything I've just said here. But I wasn't raised on that cut. I was raised on the US cut, which is 2 hours long and allows for a lot more ambiguity. I feel like the US cut, in many ways, hits you over the head with certain things, and I do like horror movies that have just enough to kind of give you allow you to fill in the blanks, but don't spoon feed you everything. Like in the UK cut, we don't get the scene of Jack and his family being visited by the is it like a social care worker or something?
Yes, like psychiatrist.
So they come to check up on the family, and it's so it's made very clear in that scene that Jack is a drunk or has been a drunk. He's trying to stay sober now, and that in that drunkenness he's abused his son essentially. He's assaulted him. Or at the very least come very close to assaulting him. Either way, it spells out very clearly this is an abusive husband, an abusive father. But it paints a picture of, okay, he's trying to get away from that. And I think by the UK cut, like ditching that altogether, what we have to go on is a few moments just littered into the film that, again, they tell you who this guy is without the need to bash you over the head with it. So, we get the interview when he goes for the interview with the job. We already get a sense of the disdain he has for his family in that interview, because part of the reason he wants to be isolated is so that he doesn't have to kind of be in the same room with them, essentially. We get a scene in the car when they're driving there where the way he talks down to his family, particularly to his wife, gives you enough to know that this ain't the golden family, man. He's like, the level of disrespect, even though it's very underhanded, very sarcastic, that he shows to his wife, shows us that this ain't going to be a rom-com.
Right.
So I just feel like having that sequence with the psychiatrist, that while yes, it does confirm certain suspicions I already had watching the UK cut, it's kind of unnecessary. It's kind of just bashing you over the head with it. We also get a load of stuff at the back end of the film where we see the Scatman Crothers character in the US cut. We see a lot of stuff with him making his journey to the hotel. Whereas in the UK cut, we get him waking up in the bed because he has the vision. And then the next thing after that is when he's literally turning up to the hotel. So they cut out a massive chunk there that I feel is actually beneficial to the pacing of the film. Gotcha. And it just, again, like I say, because I've been raised on the 2-hour cut, I'd never missed those scenes. So suddenly having them in kind of made me feel like, well, okay, they're nice. It's nice to have seen them, but I never missed them. I don't look at them scenes and go, oh, that's what we were missing. Now that bit in the film makes sense. Now I get why that character was doing this. That's why that bit felt like there was a chunk missed out. So for me, the UK cut is actually better. Now the UK cut was kind of a forced deal because the distribution arm that kind of released the film over in the UK decided that, no, we want a 2-hour film. We can't be putting a 2.5-hour horror film in cinemas. People, they're just not going to be interested in that. So Kubrick had to kind of essentially slash it to get it down to 2 hours. But I think it forced him really into
tighter editing,
tighter editing, and just think, okay, what is the story that I'm really trying to tell here, and get it down to. And I do believe that Kubrick at one point did state that he himself preferred the UK cut in the end.
Oh, really? Interesting.
But but I prefer it. But like I say, if I'd have been raised on the US cut, I guess that would be a different story, I think.
It's an interesting conversation because, like I said, I haven't seen the UK version, so all I know is the American version of it. But I want to check out the UK version now. You made me want to go back and make me watch it, see. Yeah, I see Brian's point. It is tighter. The editing is sharper, cleaner. I guess with only having ever seen the American version of it, it doesn't feel like there's any filler. But I can see if you were familiar with the UK version and then you watch the US version, it can feel like the added stuff is filler that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So it's interesting. I want to check out I don't know where I would find it, the UK version.
I'm sure my uncle could get you a copy. I think anyone who's interested in getting into filmmaking owes it to themselves to watch both those cuts, just to see what editing can do. because
power of editing.
Yeah, like so many people talk about, like you see a lot of YouTube movie reviewers talk about pacing, and sometimes you get the feeling that they don't actually have a clue what they're talking about. It just becomes one of them buzzwords that they throw out because it's like,
they've heard other people mention it. And,
and it's like, well, were you bored during the film? No. Well, then how did it have an issue with pacing?
How did it have pacing issue?
So like, but for me, I do think as an exercise in, just seeing what you can do with editing to make a film tighter. I always think the tighter a film is, the better.
Agreed.
Now, I say that with a caveat, which is that, like Zack Snyder's Justice League blows away Joss Whedon's Justice League cut. And that was like 2 hours longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a different kind of beast altogether, because that's one where you've got one director trying to immerse you into a world, and then you've got another one who's being mandated by a studio to
and that one's not even that one's not even like tighter editing. The Whedon cut is literally removing stuff out of the story that needs to be there. Like you don't even get the full story on that one. So there's a difference between having a completed story that doesn't need anything more in it, and you're just putting it in there, and then having a story that is incomplete where you need more in there. So with what Brian and I are saying is that with The Shining, the UK version, you still have a completed story, and the US cut gives you stuff in there that you don't really need to have the completed story, where with Justice League, that's a completely different situation altogether.
The question is, like, by the time you get to the end of the film, do you know everything that you should know from both cuts? And I feel like the UK cut is tighter at it, and it does a better job for my money personally. It's like,
it's interesting. I want to check it out, man. I'm gonna make it a thing next time I watch The Shining to watch the UK version, and then I'll let you know my thoughts if I enjoy it more or not. But I'll just go ahead and say my overall rating is 5 stars for this film. It's a perfect film. I say perfect. I know there's going to be people like, well, what about when I talk about a movie being a perfect film, I'm coming at it from my subjective viewing experience. I can be aware of the fact that there are movies that have objective technical issues that could be cleaned up, but that doesn't mean that it bothers my viewing experience. I can see it, I could be aware of it, but it doesn't bother me. So when I rate movies on here, it's how much do I enjoy it, or what kind of an impact did it have on me personally for my viewing experience. And for me, The Shining is the perfect film. Subjectively, I have a perfect experience. Everything I want from the film, I get from the film. So it's a 5-star film for me.
I always say to people, I mean, mine's 5 stars as well. That's I'd say UK cut 5 stars, US cut 4.5. 4.5.
Okay.
I have 3 criteria. This is what I always tell people. When people ask what makes a 5-star film, I have 3 criteria that make a 5-star film. 1, what is the technical side of things? So literally the filmmaking itself, everything from direction, acting, set design, all that stuff, the technical aspects that go into making the film. Is that on point? With The Shining, hell yeah, it's on point.
Oh, absolutely.
Number two, does it move me in some way? Does it get an emotional response? Now, when I say move me, I don't mean, it makes me cry. It was just so...
Right.
A film can move in a multitude of ways. It could scare the crap out of you. It could make you just really depressed. It could lift you up. A comedy can move you in a way that you come out of it feeling better about life.
Yeah.
So that's my second criteria. Has it moved you somewhere? Has it left an emotional impression up on you. And the third criteria for me is, will I want to rewatch it at some point? Does it have rewatch value? So, for example, I recently watched the film May December. Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman. Now, from a technical level, technical side of things, it's a 5-star film. I can't fault the way that film is made on it. The way it's directed, the performances, all that stuff. It's a 5-star film in that regard. Did it move me? Yeah, it moved. It left an impression. It left an emotional response in me that I still think about the film from time to time since I've watched it. Now the question is, will I ever go back and rewatch it? And the answer is no. It's one of those films that it's really well made on every front. It left an emotional response, but it's not one I'm ever going to feel like I need to go back to. So that's why for me it was a 4-star film. It didn't crack being a 5-star film. So that's where I come from. That's how I grade my films. So if any 5-star film for me meets those 3 criteria.
Yeah, and then I respect that about you, because I watch some YouTubers and they'll give 1 star, or they'll give one film 5 stars, and you're like, I can see how you give that movie 5 stars, and then they give another film 5 stars, and you're like, there's no way that these 2 films should both be equal. And then you listen to them explain, it's like you're coming at it from 2 different ways. Like I respect a YouTuber like yourself who's like, all right, this is my criteria. This is what the film needs to get that. And for me, I kind of throw what you're saying all into one. Like for me, if I'm going to enjoy the movie, I rate my movies, my films based on my enjoyment. But if I'm going to enjoy it, it's going to have those elements to it. I'm not going to enjoy a piece of crap film that's just not well made. But I'm also not going to enjoy the film if it doesn't have anything to offer me. If there's no emotional, if I'm emotionally disconnected from it, I'm not going to enjoy it. So, and then the rewatch value is also big, and not necessarily. I would say the one caveat with the rewatch thing, there are some movies that I would still rate, 4.5 or 5 stars that don't really have rewatch value, because of the type of impact that they had on me. It's a film that I don't want to watch a lot because of a certain, like an example, since we're in a horror community, The Exorcist. For me, that's a movie that the first time I saw it left a huge impact on me. And if we're talking straight horror, it had an incredible horror effect on me. Yeah. Not a film I can watch a lot, but
and I would give it like sometimes one of those 3 criteria is up so much that it kind of. So, like an example I would give is recently I watched the film on Netflix, Society of the Snow. Now, I personally think that film should be nominated for Best Picture this year. I think toss Barbie out. There's a couple of films in that Best Picture nominations list that I would easily chuck out and stick Society of the Snow in there. It's a 5-star film for me. Am I going to watch it again? Probably not. But the emotional impact that it had on me while I was watching it, it's almost like that was a 7 out of 5. So while the rewatchability is like a 4 out of 5, the emotional impact wasn't just a 5 out of 5. It was like a 7 out of 5. It's one of those films where emotionally it kind of broke me. And it's like, and that's one of those instances where I say, I might not rewatch that again, but that is a definite 5 out of 5 film.
Exactly. I'm the same way for me on that. So we both give this one 5 stars. Both agree on it. If you do not give this movie 5 stars, you're wrong. I'm kidding. We all get our opinions are opinions, no matter how wrong they may be. But so Brian and my opinion's the right one. But no, let me know y'all's opinion on this movie. What would you rate this film? Do you enjoy it? let me know anything and everything you want to let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to check out Brian's awesome channel. He's reviewing different Oscar winners over the years, which I'm loving. And I'm looking forward to. I know it should be coming, the annual Lomax Movie Awards, which he does, and I always enjoy watching those too. So I'm looking forward to seeing what movies he's going to have for this year. But Brian, was there anything else you wanted to throw in or mention? Is there anything you want to mention to the viewers about what you're doing, or anything you're up to, or anything like that?
No. I mean, I've got I do so much on YouTube. So I have a podcast on YouTube as well called The X-Files Revisited. So any X-Files fans, if you want to join me and Graham, we're going through every episode of The X-Files. We've literally just recorded our review of the movie. We're up to the first movie. So yeah, there's that, The X-Files Revisited. I also have another YouTube channel where I look at movies purely from a Christian perspective. So I look at what theology we can draw out of movies. I do actually have a video on that channel about The Shining. It was my first video I did on that channel. And that channel is called The Movie Evangelist. So if you want to look at how to read movies from a Christian perspective, maybe check that out. Even if you're not a person of faith, maybe it might be interesting to you to see how someone of faith looks at a movie that you might think, hang on, I didn't think there was anything to do with faith in that movie. What's he got here? But yeah, that might be of interest to you. And yeah, that's about it. But awesome. Like Clayton says, at the moment, I'm just going through every Best Picture Oscar winner that I can.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it, man. I'm loving it. So, Brian, thanks for being on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it. Can't thank you enough. I know we were planning on doing a collab last year, but I had a crazy situation happen. But glad we were able to make this happen. And I'm still upset that you didn't get the total of $260 worth of Christmas gifts that I was sending your way. I was heartbroken, man, because I knew how much you were going to love it.
Yeah, when you said it's like, but I'm just like, no, dude, nothing's come.
Dude, it was incredible. It was a Batarang from a Ben Affleck Batarang that was like custom made. Dude, it was a thing of beauty. I almost kept it for myself because I loved it, but I was like, no, I gotta send this to Brian. But
I want to know where it is. I want to know who's got it. What
dude, they got an awesome gift. Well, it'd be funny if they're not even a Batman fan. They're just like, what is this thing? Just like trashed it. You're like, no. Yeah. Oh man. But Brian, I enjoyed having you on, man. We'll have to do this again sometime. But thank you all for tuning in. Till next time, kick it and rock on.